Dear listeners of the AUIB FM 101.5, now we are officially in the Meet the Expert segment on the Uni Voice Show. As climate change intensifies and water becomes scarcer, agriculture stands at a crossroads. And to talk more about this topic, we are joined by Dr. David M. Kargbo, the co-author of the important study Farming the 2030s, a policy playbook for climate resilient tech-enabled agriculture in arid and semi-arid regions. The paper lays a realistic roadmap for making farmer smarter, more resilient, and technology-driven, with lessons drawn from Australia, the US, and the Middle East, especially Iraq. So let's hear more about this vision and what it means for the future of food and water security. But first, let's say hello and welcome to Dr. David.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come over and speak to you and the people of Iraq.
You're welcome, Dr. David. First, Dr. David, could you start by introducing yourself to our viewers and listeners and telling us about your background and what led you to this field especially?
Well, first of all, I originally hail from Africa, from Sierra Leone. That's where I was born. And I migrated to the United States many years ago. I studied my master's and PhD were actually in agronomy, agriculture, with soil science specialty. After I graduated, because of the specialty that I was in, which is looking at the transport of contaminant and even chemicals for agriculture within the soil-based environment, I was hired by the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a federal agency. Although at that time, prior to that, I was also a professor at the university in Nebraska. That's where I went to school. Also helped out in the extension program. Following that, I became the first director that started a groundwater program in the District of Columbia. And then I went to Philadelphia, where I worked in the innovation division as a senior scientist for the EPA. So I graduated years back, about 10 years ago, and worked as a professor at Temple University. And while I was there, this opportunity came in order to start the first climate change center using a grant from the State Department, the U.S. State Department. And I applied for it, and luckily I was selected. And I have been here in Iraq now for a year and a half, directing the Center for Climate Change. And because my original background is in agriculture, my master's and PhD, like I said before, and I see how climate change is really impacting the state of Iraq. And not just Iraq, the Middle East as a whole. And I found out that this is through Dr. Farid Jassim, who is also a board member, a trustee, a board member of the Board of Trustees, that there is a special session usually by the New England Journal of Public Policy in 2020. In COP28, they were invited to produce a couple of papers, policy papers. They did that, and 2030, they're doing the same thing. So the idea came to Dr. Farid saying, you know what, maybe we should look at putting together a paper.
Yes.
And I did.
Well, that's excellent. But
together with my
I have
colleagues.
a specific question here. What inspired you and your colleagues to develop something like Farming at 2030s? What's the gap or a challenge where you and your colleague trying to address here?
Okay. Climate change has become a major obstacle when it comes to farming.
Yes.
As you said earlier on, water is the number one constraint when it comes to farming. Even more than land for the Middle East. And so the need to come up with a solution that addresses these constraints in farming in Iraq was very, very high. So when I spoke to my colleagues, Rawia from the Ministry of Agriculture and Naeem from the Ministry of the Environment, they both agreed that this is something necessary. And since COP30 was coming up, so let's put something together. And we did.
Okay, Dr. David, working on a dry or a semi-dry regions is never easy, especially here in Iraq. What were the toughest obstacles you faced here in conducting this research?
Well, these obstacles are common when it comes to any research. Number one, especially if you're not collecting original data and you rely on data that's already available, people collect data differently. And so doing QA/QC, quality control on that data could be very difficult. The amount of data available in order to produce a paper which makes sense sometimes can be a problem as well. So these are obstacles. And then the other obstacles are that the farmers, they just want to be able to produce crop and be able to use as minimum resources as possible. And so in order to be able to get them to provide you information, sometimes it's not that easy. But these obstacles we decided to, because I think one of the questions was going to come was, how we put together our numbers. Because of these obstacles that we have in Iraq, therefore we have to look at places that have been successful in addressing the agriculture problems and see what we can take from those, what kind of data is available that can be transported or can be used to address the problems in Iraq. And that's exactly what we did.
Well, that's excellent. You described, Dr. David, a bundled systems approach that links technology, water smart infrastructure, and the nature based methods. Could you explain what makes this integrated model more effective here?
Thanks for that question. To be honest with you, this problem and the suggested solution that we have for this problem is not just unique to Iraq, it's everywhere in the world, including the United States, where you try to solve an agriculture problem by looking at individual solutions instead of bundling them together and see what the impact is. Individual solutions, for example, when you look at Iraq, how do people get water in their farms? One way they get that water is maybe the water is coming through a canal, and that canal probably has a whole bunch of problems. Some areas within that canal is leaking. The water that's coming in the canal has a lot of salt in it, just simply because the environment here is salty. And why is it salty? Well, Iraq has a dry environment. Water in the soil environment usually has a lot of elements that the plants need, like calcium, potassium, etc., etc. And when it's in the water environment and then you have evaporation, what happens? Because of the heat, the water evaporates, and what's left behind are salts.
Yes.
Okay. You have a lot of sodium, which provides sodic soils, and sodium, when it's in plenty and full, it can actually impact crop growth.
So why did you choose Australia as a global test bed for this research? And what key lessons from that experience could apply to the Middle East, especially Iraq?
Australia is a unique place, and unique in the sense that the problems that Iraq is facing, these are the same problems that Australia faces, but they have found a way. They have found a way or ways to address those problems. Australia is dry. They have areas that are dry. The soils are salty. The water is salty also. And we in Iraq, especially areas around like Basra, that are closer to the water environment, to the ocean, find the salts, high concentrations of salts in the soils as well as the water. And one reason for that is because of climate change. When you have a sea level rise due to climate change, the tendency is for water to begin to move inland. and seawater is salty. So that helps also, in addition to the fact that you have evaporation of salts, evaporation of water from the land. So what we did was to look at how Australia addressed the problem, where they bundle the solutions. That's why we use the word bundling. You bundle the solutions with respect to water. How do you get water to the farmer or to the farm? In this case, you can, and in Australia as well, you can use water that has been used before, but now it's been treated. So we call that reuse water. The World Health Organization has come up with ways you can actually use water that has been used before, but you can use it based on purpose. For example, if it's for farming and applying it on the land, depending on the concentration of contaminants and salts that are present, that determines the kind of crop that you're going to grow. You're not going to grow crops that you will eat raw when the water itself is contaminated, because the crop will have that water. So knowing exactly what to grow and knowing the concentration of the water that's been reused. Okay, and then you couple that with in an infrastructure system where, for example, say the farmer is using drip irrigation, where water only gets released to the roots. Okay, water does not get wasted at all. Okay, so you couple that with drip irrigation and other infrastructure systems. Then there is also the farmer. Not all of them are very well educated to know exactly when to plant, because especially when they don't know when it's going to rain. So advisory services, are usually necessary, and Australia does that, providing advisory services to farmers on a timely basis.
So based on this research, you give advices to the farmer here in Iraq. You can give that advices to the Iraqi farmers.
Exactly, but let me the bundle itself. Okay, I just gave you about, I think, 2 or 3.
Yes.
But it goes beyond that. Okay. So the advisory services is one.
Yes.
Also, depending on the environment or where what the farmer is planting, we also advise to provide agrovoltaics, in that, let's say a farm which is very dry and has a lot of heat coming in.
Yes.
You have agrovoltaics what provide energy to the farm. At the same time, since they are right above the crop, it provides shade, to cool the farm, right? And then, of course, in addition to the advisory services, agrivoltaics, we also, Australia also provides guidance on the type of plant material that will be grown on a crop, on a land.
Okay.
Say for example, the land has a lot of salt in it, so you want to grow crops that can withstand high salt concentration.
Yes.
So these are all bundled services. But I can tell you one of the bundle service that really impresses me that Australia is doing is one on insurance. Okay. So assuming we have the system where we can predict what's going to happen in the future, say what's going to happen a month from now, or 5 days from now, or a week from now, because we have the ability to do that. So what the insurance company does is to provide, when there is going to be something that's going to affect the farm, the insurance will pay up right away, and they don't wait until the problem has occurred. Okay. This is one thing that, even in the United States, that concept is only beginning to take hold right now. And if that happens here, that will help the farmer a lot, because they're going to be able to address the problem before the problem occurs by using the funds that the insurance company will deal out to the farm.
And the term of doing this research or implementing the methods inside this research, did you deal with a real farmer, Iraqi farmer?
Okay. To be honest, no. Okay, remember I said
before. But you are
before,
giving these solutions to the Iraqi farmers.
That is true.
And you can give them advices on how to deal with all the circumstances that they are facing or the obstacles that they are facing while farming.
Okay. Remember, this article is written by three of us.
Yes.
Okay. And one of them is an agriculturist who has
Really?
dealt with farmers. Yes.
Yes.
In fact, she is one of the leaders in the negotiation team for Iraq at the COP right now, COP 30. That's
Okay.
going to be taking place very soon. So she has that experience with dealing with farmers here. You know, I have to admit, since.
So part of it is based on a real experience with the Iraqi farmers.
Oh, yes, definitely. Based on experience. But again, the bundle is based on
What
the ex-
happened in Australia
what
and the
happened in
US.
Australia.
Yes. So you're saying if it's working in Australia and
It
the
should
US,
work.
it will work here because it's the same obstacles, the same circumstances for the farmers.
Exactly.
Okay. So I want to say something about that paper highlights Iraq as a case study in a lot of terms. What are the most practical recommendations Iraq can adopt to boost water productivity and climate resilience?
Okay. Thank you for that question because it's a very important question, which many countries, not just Iraq, will really need to think carefully as they try to improve their agriculture. First of all, when it comes to water, you have to address water problems on a basin basis. What do I mean by that? You're not just going to be looking at one individual farmer, making sure that that farmer uses drip irrigation, right? But you're going to look at the entire basin. In some areas, a farmer will use more water compared to other areas within that basin. And then do a calculation as to how much water is being used and how much water is needed. You do that balancing. And also, we need to track how much water over time and will allow farmers that have been able to use less water and store some of that water on the ground to use that water at a later time. That means we need to improve our accounting system, which is not easy because putting sensors inside water wells, okay, that's an expensive endeavor, but over time it's going to pay for itself because what the sensors do is they track how much water is being extracted and also how much water gets come into the field. For example, let's say you have water coming from a canal, right? And it's coming to a farmer's land. Now, the farmer doesn't use all of that water. Some of that water gets stored, what we call managed aquifer recharge. And when that happens, the water in the aquifer begins to rise and rise and rise. And when it rises, what it does is it reduces the inflow of salty water from the ocean. Okay. And also, we use nature-based solutions. So again, part of the bundle is using nature-based solutions like growing, wetlands, crops that can actually clean the water before it even gets to the farm.
Okay, that's really impressive. Dr. David, you've mentioned impressive targets like 20%, 30%, higher water efficiency, and cutting chemical use by up to 50%. How did you reach these figures and what do they mean in real terms?
Okay. All right. Water availability. Okay. You want to reduce the amount of water per unit crop that is grown. And again, taking the Australian example, the factors that cause reduction of water use, we take those into consideration. Say, for example, they are using water that's coming in, that's reuse water, that's been treated, right, at a wastewater treatment plant here in Iraq, and now it's available to be used by the farmer. Okay, that reduces water consumption for drinking purposes. And then you're using water from nature-based solutions. The water is being cleaned by the plant.
Okay.
And that water, it reduces the amount of water that you need for plant. And then also the type of crop that you grow. So you bundle all those. Each one causes a reduction in the amount of water that you're going to need in order for the plants to grow. So when we add all of that together, we come up with that 20 to 30% reduction in water use. And we do that. We do it also for the reduction in inputs. In other words, fertilizers, chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and that are going to enable the crop to grow. You can reduce that by, first of all, using the right variety, right? You can apply techniques in agriculture that reduce chemical input, but at the same time have either the same amount of output in terms of crop growth or even more.
Okay, that's really impressive, Dr. David. I mean, I have a question here. This is the research and there is results and findings outcome from this research. Can we implement these findings here at the environment of AUIB and give maybe knowledge to the students or the people who are doing the farming job here at AUIB?
Yes.
We can do that?
The answer is yes, definitely. In fact, at the Climate Change Center, we have come up with a campus sustainability plan.
Yes.
And part of that, we are assuming that at some point we're going to be having some farming here.
Yes.
And I'm also of the opinion, and I've started talking to some of the key people here, that this university needs to have a College of Agriculture. And that will help Iraq so much. Do you know that Iraq spends billions of dollars each year importing food crops? Those crops could be grown right here in Iraq using our bundled approach, reducing imports and therefore increasing, the wealth of people in Iraq,
so
as well as AUIB.
Yes, there is a lot of hope here at AUIB.
There is a lot of hope.
Leveraging the agriculture scene and opening a university for agriculture.
Yes, having a College of Agriculture is key here.
Yes.
Especially now that we have the Climate Change Center that will work with the College of Agriculture.
Yes.
We have other colleges that will also provide input to that college. But it's very, very important that this university start thinking about having a College of Agriculture.
That's brilliant, Dr. David. The final question, Dr. David. On which international platforms or journals was the study published, and how has the scientific community react to it here locally in Iraq and outside Iraq?
Well, the second part of the question, that remains to be seen, because the paper just got released about a week ago. So it's going to take some time.
Okay.
But the fact that it's part of the papers that are of a special issue for COP30, which that means it's going to be introduced at COP30. Our team from Iraq that's going to be negotiating in a side event are going to be using that paper. Again, like I said, two of them who are all also going to be in Brazil at COP30, they are co-authors, and they're going to be able to answer the same questions like you're asking right now. And what happens is, if they're able to convince in these negotiations that if Iraq follows this path, we're going to have improvements, 20 to 30% water availability, 30 to 50% crop growth, increase in crop growth. We're going to have more than 60% of advisory people, farmers that are going to be reached by simple, messages that are going to go out to their cell phones. Hey, it's time to irrigate, or it's time not to irrigate. This is the amount of water you can add because it's going to be rain in about such and such a time. All of that bundled together increases output with less input. Yes. Now, they can then use that information to negotiate with the authorities and COP30 as to how much money, because we call that the means of implementation. The support from financial support, technical support, etc., that Iraq will receive. So in a way, that paper becomes the vehicle by which Iraq can help to negotiate with the authorities for funding, grants, etc.
This is really thoughtful, and I wish you the best of luck with this mission to the future. And I think all these findings from this really important research, I hope to see it here in Iraq locally working and giving all these positive results to the farmer here in Iraq, because they deserve that. And this is a lot of effort that need to be noticed, need to be appreciated Dr. David Kargbo, thank you so much for being here. We are very proud to have you with us today at the segment that is called Meet the Experts at the Uni Voice Show. Thank you so much. And if you want to say anything at the end, the mic is yours.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. It's really a pleasure being here and trying to help improve situation in Iraq. One of my best friends back in the United States when I started my studies at the University of Nebraska is from Iraq, and he's still in the United States. And maybe he will see this interview and he will just smile because we did talk about it that someday I'm going to be in Iraq, although he's still in the United States. But it's my pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk about agriculture in Iraq.
Thank you so much, Dr. David. And from me and the team of the AUIBF 101.5, we send our greetings to your friend, and we hope to see you in a lot of topics ahead to the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.